The day I went to pick up my nephew from preschool, a sleek, jet-black Maybach was idling by the curb. My little nephew, Andy, curious as ever, started trotting toward it to touch the polished hood. I caught him by the collar and pulled him back. "Andy, Joel, look. The man who got out of that car is so cool. He's holding a little girl's hand." I didn't say a word. I just wanted to get Andy away from there as fast as possible. But then a familiar, drawling voice drifted toward us. "Joel, what are you running from?" My feet felt like lead. I turned around to see Julian Sterling, who was apparently there to pick up his daughter. 3 years since the divorce, and you're still as quiet as ever." He smirked, walking toward me. He reflexively reached out to ruffle my hair, but I stepped aside, letting his hand hang in the empty air. Julian's hand froze for a second, an awkward twitch in his fingers before he shoved it back into his suit pocket. "Do you really hate me that much?" He sighed, his tone halfway between a joke and a plea. "You spent 7 years chasing me, Joel. I find it hard to believe you've just cut those feelings out of your heart." He wasn't wrong. I hadn't completely cut them out. What I couldn't let go of was the 7 years of my youth I'd wasted, throwing them away on a man who didn't deserve them. The autumn wind swept past us, swirling dead, leaves between our feet. The school principal came rushing over, looking flustered. "Mr. Sterling, we had no idea you'd be picking up Ellie personally today." Her gaze then shifted to me, her expression turning into a mask of confusion. "Oh, do you two know each other?" Julian nodded, about to confirm it, but I beat him to the punch. "No, we don't." I took Andy's hand and started to walk away, but Julian's long stride cut us off. "Where do you live now? Let me give you a ride." Andy's eyes lit up like stars. He tugged at my sleeve, pleading silently. I knelt down to get on a level with my nephew. "Andy, do you remember what happens when you ride in fancy cars? Do you want to feel sick again?" Andy's face went pale. Remembering his last bout of motion sickness and the subsequent vomiting, he hung his head and stepped back. "I'm sorry," I said, standing up to face Julian. "The boy gets motion sickness easily. I'm afraid we'll have to pass on your generous offer, Mr. Sterling." He arched an eyebrow. "Your kid? He's just like you then. You always did have a weak stomach for cars." I offered a tight smile, but didn't correct him. On the walk home, Andy pointed at the ring finger of my left hand at the band I'd forgotten to take off. "Did that cool uncle give you that?" I blinked, looking down at the diamond. It was a custom piece Julian had commissioned from a master jeweler in Paris for my birthday. The inside of the band was engraved with our names and the words "always together." Now its brilliance had faded, looking dull and lonely. I slid the ring off my finger. It didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. When we got home, my sister-in-law, Claire, had just finished work. As she took Andy from me, she noticed the bare skin on my finger. She leaned in, whispering, "What happened? Did he piss you off again?" Claire worked at Sterling Industries. Ever since she found out I was the CEO's ex-wife, she lived for the office gossip. I sighed, but Claire kept going. "I heard at the office today that Mr. Sterling skipped the board meeting just to pick up his daughter. He's never been that hands-on before." She gave me a knowing look. "You think he heard the news that you were back in town and rushed over to accidentally run into you?" "Not a chance," I interrupted. "I only landed this morning. There's no way the grapevine moves that fast. Besides, I didn't believe Julian Sterling cared enough to track my flights." Claire shrugged. "I still don't get why you walked away. Julian is the golden boy of the Sterling dynasty. He's handsome, rich, and back then, he was obsessed with you. He knelt in the rain for 3 days just to get his grandfather's blessing to marry you. Even after the wedding, he treated you like a queen. What more could you have wanted?" She was right. Every person I knew asked me that after the divorce. If I hadn't gone home early that one afternoon, I might have asked myself the same thing. Sometimes I'd fall into a daze, wondering how a love that lasted 7 years could just vanish. I first met Julian during our freshman year of high school. Back then, because of my weight and my shy personality, I was the favorite target for the class bullies. "Look at her. She's not just fat. She's a mute. She looks like a giant, silent bear, doesn't she?" The classroom erupted in laughter. I gripped the edges of my oversized hoodie, feeling the fabric straining. It was an elite private school filled with trust fund kids. I knew I didn't have the social capital to fight back. Maybe look in a mirror before you judge someone else. A firm, clear voice came from behind me. I turned to see a boy in a crisp, white shirt walking toward us. "Joel is in the top 10 of our class rankings. Have any of you even cracked the top 50? Julian Sterling crossed his arms and scanned the room. The laughter died instantly. In that moment, for the first time, I felt like I could finally breathe. He stood there, backlit by the sun, and though I couldn't see his face clearly, I could hear my heart drumming against my ribs. From then on, we became friends. Julian was the only son of the powerful Sterling family, raised in a world of privilege and affection. He had everything: Perfect grades, athletic talent, and a charismatic personality that made every girl in school swoon. Because of that, rumors started to fly. To protect him from the gossip, I chose to distance myself. I smothered my blossoming feelings, but fate had other plans. We ended up at the same university. The afternoon we reunited on campus. He looked different, thinner. Why are you still wearing your old high school track jacket? I teased him. Are you that sentimental? He didn't answer. He turned away, and the bright spark that used to live in his eyes was gone. I found out later that his parents had gone through a nasty divorce. Julian had stayed with his mother, and his father had remarried and had another son. His father hadn't just stripped Julian of his inheritance. He'd cut off his tuition and living expenses entirely. His mother, used to the life of a socialite, didn't know how to work. The burden fell entirely on Julian. During college, Julian worked 3 jobs a day. To help him, I worked double shifts at a diner until my hands were swollen, but I gave him my higher-paying tutoring gigs, claiming I was bored of them. I pulled all-nighters to organize his study notes, while my own GPA slipped for the first time in my life. The night after finals, he pulled out a silver necklace. It wasn't cheap. Under the moonlight, the chain shimmered, looking just like the light in his eyes back in high school. Will you be my girlfriend? I promise. Once I make it, you'll never have to struggle again. My teenage crush finally found its echo. We went from college sweethearts to a post-grad wedding. It felt like a fairy tale. When he wanted to start his own firm, I supported him wholeheartedly. My savings weren't enough, so I went to my parents and asked for their retirement fund. Julian and I both knew how hard they'd worked for that money. He actually knelt before them, swearing he'd pay them back with interest. My father just sighed, helped him up, and said, "Just take care of Joelle. That's all the payment we need." Julian's vow was the most serious thing I'd ever seen. 3 years later, his startup was a massive success. He became the new darling of the business world. Then, the old man, Sterling, showed up at our door. He was crying, saying his mistress had left him and his younger son had passed away in a tragic accident. He begged Julian to come back and take over the family empire. The condition? He had to leave his low-class wife. Julian refused at first, but after his mother begged him to secure their future, he knelt in the rain outside the Sterling estate for 3 days to convince the patriarch to let me into the family. I became a Sterling, but the years of overwork and stress had taken their toll. I developed chronic joint pain. Julian hired a young nurse to take care of me. She was only 18, full of innocence and wonder. Whenever she spoke of Julian, her eyes shone with pure adoration. "It must be amazing," the nurse said while gently massaging my legs. "I want to be someone like Mr. Sterling someday." "Is that so?" Julian's voice came from the doorway, carrying a hint of a smile. "You'll have to work very hard then." That was how my husband met the nurse. On the day, I was in too much pain to even walk. The nurse, Summer, was sweet and helpful. She won over everyone in the house. Julian was especially attentive to her. He said she reminded him of how we were back in college, young, scrappy, and working too hard. Feeling sorry for her because of her age and her financial situation, I often took her shopping, buying her new clothes and jewelry. She would tear up, hugging me. "Joelle, you're the best person I've ever met, besides my parents." I would just smile and pat her head. She promised she would find a way to repay our kindness. So, when Julian came home exhausted, she'd volunteer to give him a shoulder rub. When I spent all morning cooking his favorite lunch, she'd offer to run it over to his office so I could rest my aching joints. Then came the night I found a pink bunny ear hair tie in Julian's pocket. It wasn't mine. He glanced at it and gave a casual explanation. Summer left it in the office. I brought it back for her. I didn't think twice. Girls that age are forgetful. It seemed normal. 3 days later was my birthday. Summer asked for the day off, saying she wasn't feeling well. I felt bad for her, so I doubled her salary for the month as a bonus. Julian, who always had a surprise for me, was stuck in meetings. The hours ticked by, and I sat alone, feeling a growing hollow in my chest. With only 1 minute left before my birthday ended, the door finally opened. Julian walked in, looking disheveled, but carrying a massive bouquet of roses. He gave me a guilty smile. "Are you mad?" Hidden in the center of the roses was a velvet box. I opened it to find an exquisite, brilliant diamond ring. "I'm sorry," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "I should have given you something like this when we got married. I had this 2 hearts ring custom-made in France. Our names were engraved on the inside, intertwined." I fought back tears and hugged him, but as I buried my face in his neck, I caught a scent. It was a familiar fragrance, sweet, floral, and cloying. "Did you see Summer today?" The sudden question caught him off guard. He laughed it off. "How could I? I've been in meetings all day. My head is spinning from spreadsheets." I nodded, pushing the thought away, and held him tighter. The next morning, I went to visit my parents. After a short while, I remembered that Summer was supposed to be back. Worried she might be lonely or still feeling sick, I headed home early, carrying some homemade food my mother had packed for her. As I opened the front door, I heard muffled, rhythmic breathing coming from the master bathroom. The frosted glass door showed 2 overlapping shadows. My hand shook as I reached for the handle. I didn't want to believe what my gut was telling me. But when I swung the door open and saw Julian and Summer, their bodies entangled and bare, the bag of food hit the floor. The bathroom was thick with that sickly sweet steam. I lost it. I grabbed everything within reach, bottles, candles, glass jars, and hurled them at them. A shard of glass caught Julian's forehead, and blood started to bloom. Even then, he stayed turned away from me, shielding the girl in his arms. "Joelle, calm down. Don't hurt Summer." He grabbed a towel to wrap around the shivering girl. Summer looked at me with eyes like a frightened rabbit. She dropped to her knees, sobbing. "Joelle, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have fallen for him. Please don't be mad at him. It's all my fault. Hit me if you have to." I ignored her. I forced Julian to look at me. I was laughing, though it sounded like a scream. "She's 7 years younger than you, Julian. How could you?" That seemed to hit a nerve. He snarled back. "So what if she is? Look at yourself. You've let yourself go. You're always sick, always complaining. You have no right to talk about her." So that was it. After years of building a life with him from nothing, I was just the sick wife who let herself go. I couldn't believe those words came from his mouth. I tried to lung at them, to slap the smugness off their faces, but Julian grabbed my wrists, pinning them with a brutal grip. "Stop being hysterical." His eyes were cold, menacing. "Summer is pregnant. If you touch a single hair on her head, I will make you regret it." A bitter cold washed over me. What he didn't know was that a week ago, I'd received my own test results. I was pregnant too. I went home later and stared at the yellowing ultrasound photo, remembering what the doctor had asked me before the procedure. "Are you sure about this, Miss Carter?" "Idée juste nuda." Lying on that cold operating table, I didn't feel the chill. All I felt was a dark, hollow satisfaction in knowing his child would never be born. In the end, I became the crazy ex-wife everyone whispers about. After the affair came to light, I sent their photos to the tabloids. I even hacked the digital billboard outside Julian's office to play a video of the confrontation. Sterling Industries' stock plummeted. Even the nursing board opened an investigation into Summer. But Julian was one step ahead. He knew me too well. He let me play my hand, then announced to the world that I had suffered a mental breakdown. He claimed the videos and photos were AI-generated deepfakes. Even then, he wouldn't give me a divorce. Instead, he played the devoted husband, telling the press he would stand by me through my recovery. I had no one to turn to. As I sat in our house, crying silently, Julian offered me a tissue. When I wouldn't take it, he knelt down, his voice soft and patronizing as he wiped my eyes. "Stop making a scene, okay? Summer is just a girl. She's no threat to your position as Mrs. Sterling. When the baby is born, we can raise it together. You could be the mother." He said it as if he were discussing the weather. "Do you even have a soul?" I asked, breathless. Was our entire history just a calculation to him? I slapped him hard. He laughed, a dark, angry sound, and dragged me toward his car, saying we were going to the courthouse to end it because he couldn't stand my insanity anymore. I hated him in that moment, but I hated myself more, the part of me that still couldn't sign the papers. 10 years of my life were tied up in this man. Admitting the marriage was dead felt like admitting my life was a failure. At the courthouse, Summer showed up. She held her barely, their baby bump, and tried to grab my arm, acting like she was trying to console me. I reflexively shoved her away. She stumbled, her heels catching, and she fell hard onto the pavement, clutching her stomach and screaming. But right before she fell, I saw the tiny, triumphant smirk on her lips. Julian's calm facade shattered. He didn't even think. He swung his hand and delivered a stinging slap to my face. My head buzzed. I tasted copper in my mouth, but I swallowed the blood. As Julian rushed Summer to the emergency room, I sat on a courthouse bench and signed the divorce papers. I gave him back every bit of the love he'd ever given me. When I got back to the house to pack, I realized the ultrasound report in my bag was gone. "You still haven't found the report?" Claire looked at me with pity as I finished my story. "Maybe you dropped it at the courthouse." "Doesn't matter," I said. I really didn't care anymore. That night, Claire insisted on taking me and Andy out for dinner. She wanted to celebrate my return to the States and cheer me up. We sat in a dimly lit bistro. I cut a piece of steak for Andy, watching his chubby cheeks move as he chewed. Claire and I shared a small, sad smile. If my baby had been born, they'd be about Andy's age now. They would have had bright eyes and soft hair, They'd be tugging on my hand, calling me mommy. Sometimes I envied Claire, but I didn't regret my choice. I knew I couldn't have given that child a stable home. I didn't have it in me to be a good mother while tied to a monster. The restaurant doors swung open, causing a stir. I heard the distinct click of expensive leather shoes on the hardwood. Julian Sterling was walking toward us, looking down at me with an air of cold superiority. Claire jumped. Mr. Sterling. I grabbed Andy's hand to leave, but Julian blocked us. Manager? Bring one of everything on the menu. He looked at me. I remember you used to love the foie gras here. He pulled out a chair and sat down, crossing his legs with effortless grace. Too bad. It's probably too rich for your blood now. Claire swallowed hard, glanced at me, and then grabbed Andy, making a break for the exit. I stopped the manager before he could start the order. I looked Julian in the eye. What do you want? His eyes remained fixed on me. The arrogant posture seemed to deflate slightly. It took him a long time to mutter, How have you been? I've been great. My heart didn't race. I wasn't angry. I was just calm. I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. And you? You and Summer must be very happy. Shortly after the divorce, I'd heard they'd married. Julian was supposedly a doting girl dad now. Back then, I was on the verge of a total breakdown. It was my brother, Mark, who put me on a plane and told me to get as far away as possible to heal. Julian went silent. I had zero interest in his life. As I stood up to leave, he grabbed my wrist. Did you? He seemed to be struggling. His eyes were bloodshot. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I shook him off, my disgust playing on my face. No. If this is about Summer's baby, he shouted after me, causing the entire restaurant to turn and stare. I stopped. That baby was never born, he said, his voice cracking with pain. Ellie, she's adopted. I got her from an orphanage. Julian Sterling is a pathetic man. He claimed to love Summer so much back then. When I got home and told Claire, she pulled up her phone, showing me the latest gossip she'd dug up. You wouldn't believe it. After you left, he never had a kid with that Summer girl. He adopted Ellie just a few days before you moved back to town. Why? It didn't make sense. Did Summer have a miscarriage? I'd barely pushed her that day. Claire leaned in, lowering her voice. Word is, Summer was never pregnant. She faked the whole thing with a forged report just to get you out of the picture and marry into the family. I actually laughed. Oh, Julian, you really are a terrible judge of character. It was Friday, almost time for Mark to get home. He was a high-powered trial lawyer and usually worked late when he had a big case. Claire and I were waiting for him when we heard shouting outside the door. Get out. Don't you ever come back here, or I swear I'll file a restraining order. I had a bad feeling. I opened the door to see Mark and Julian in a heated confrontation. Joel. Julian saw me and tried to push past my brother, his eyes red. Mark held him back with a firm hand. I couldn't understand why he was acting like a heartbroken lover. What are you doing here? Julian gripped the seams of his trousers, looking down, unable to meet my eyes. I know you were pregnant back then, and you got rid of it. So he'd finally found the report. I nodded. He let out a choked sob. After I found out Summer lied about being pregnant, I went through her things. I found your ultrasound report in the bottom of her bag. I forced the truth out of her. She found your report while she was taking care of you. She was desperate for money, for a way out of her life. So she stole yours and faked her own to replace you. I was an idiot. I was blinded by her admiration, and I was so arrogant because the business was taking off. I thought you didn't need me anymore. I felt empty, and she filled it. I'm so sorry. He actually dropped to his knees, his voice rasping. I went to the hospital records. I know you were so heartbroken you couldn't keep it. I failed both of you. Mark sneered. You're a little late with the apology, don't you think, Sterling? Get out of here. You're polluting my sister's air. He was right. I remembered waiting for a whole year after the divorce before I finally left the country. Why a year? Because part of me had hoped he'd come looking for me, crying and begging for forgiveness, just like he was now. But he never came. Back then, Julian was too proud. He told everyone I'd be back on my knees within a month, begging for a reconciliation. He told his friends I was like a stray dog he couldn't get rid of. He was so certain of my love because I'd spent 7 years proving it to him. But during those countless nights of crying myself to sleep, that love had been ground into dust. I didn't have much, but I had my pride. Once I made up my mind, I was gone. Apparently, Julian had tried to come to the house once after that, but Mark had chased him off. That night, my phone rang. A number I hadn't seen in years. A woman's voice, sweet as poison honey, came through. Joel? I heard you're back. Want to grab a drink? There are some things Julian hasn't told you. Claire squeezed my hand. You don't have to go. We could just block her. Even Andy ran over to hug me. Don't go, Andy. Stay and play with me tomorrow. I knelt down and stroked his hair. Andy has to go finish something. Once it's over, I'll take you wherever you want to go, okay? Andy nodded. Claire looked apologetic. I hate to keep asking you to watch him. I'll take him to daycare tomorrow. Last time he went to daycare, he got into a fight and didn't eat. I reminded her, kissing Andy's cheek. He likes his auntie, don't you, Andy? The next day, I took Andy to a cafe to meet Summer. Years had passed. Her thin, waifish face had filled out. She looked expensive, carrying herself with the practiced grace of a socialite. She looked like a sterling wife. Me? I was in a plain sweater and sneakers. Ordinary. She looked at Andy. Your kid? I nodded. Andy was my kid in every way that mattered. She stirred her coffee, looking bored. You know, Julian thought about you every day after you left. He pretended he didn't care, but he was a wreck. He'd sit in your old bedroom for hours, just staring at the wall. He couldn't handle life without you. He used to scream at me because I didn't do things the way you did, Summer said with a bitter laugh. I wasn't his wife for 10 years. How was I supposed to know how he liked his coffee? He kept telling himself you'd come back. It took 2 years for him to realize he'd actually lost you. Then he tried to find you at your parents' house, but you were gone. He was so humiliated that he acted like he didn't care when you finally came back. I knew Julian. He had a massive ego. Maybe it was because he'd been looked down on when he was working those college jobs. He couldn't stand being inferior to anyone, especially me. Seeing my blank expression, Summer looked annoyed. Don't you want him back? He knelt for you. He's the most powerful man in the city, and he knelt. Should I be grateful? No. Fine, Summer said. You know why he named the girl Ellie? He told me he wanted a kid who made enough noise so he could pretend the house wasn't empty. So he could pretend you never left. Very classic Julian. But I felt sorry for the girl. Joelle, don't you get it? Summer's voice rose. He even named the child after you. What more do you want? Joelle. Ellie. Was he thinking of me every time he called her name? A wave of nausea hit me. The conversation ended, and Summer stomped out on her designer heels. Andy sat in silence for a moment before looking at me. Auntie, was that lady a bad person? I didn't know what to say. I didn't hate Summer exactly, but she hadn't won Julian's love either. She'd wasted her youth to be a bird in a gilded cage. If she hadn't latched onto Julian, maybe she could have made something of herself. Andy didn't say another word. Suddenly, he let go of my hand and bolted. Andy! I chased after him, but he was fast. He rounded a corner and vanished. I was frantic. Then, I looked up at the pedestrian bridge. There was Summer holding Andy's hand. She was wearing the exact same smile she'd worn the day she fell at the courthouse. Cunning. Fake. I ran toward the bridge, but by the time I got there, they were gone. In a sea of people, my nephew was nowhere to be found. A mixture of terror and rage consumed me. When I found out Julian was cheating, I hadn't been this scared. If Summer Reed touched a single hair on Andy's head, I would kill her myself. I forced myself to breathe and called 911. The police arrived and checked the bridge's surveillance footage. They tracked Andy's movements to the bridge, but the feed cut out right after that. A technical glitch. I called Mark and Claire, then I dialed Julian Sterling. Summer took Andy, I said, my voice vibrating with suppressed fury. You have 30 minutes to get her to a police station with that boy. Otherwise, I am taking every file from our startup, the promissory notes you signed, and the video of you kneeling to my parents, and I am handing them to your biggest competitor. Julian was silent for a long time. Then he let out a low, disbelieving chuckle. You're threatening me over a kid? Yes, I screamed, and I will do it. Not long after, Julian arrived at the precinct with Summer in tow. Where is Andy? I'll lunge for Summer's throat, but Julian held me back. Joelle, get a grip. Summer straightened her collar, looking smug. She glanced away. I don't know. Maybe you should watch your kid better, instead of blaming me. Claire, who had rushed over from work, didn't hesitate. She walked up and delivered a thunderous slap to Summer's face. You bitch. Where's my son? The room went quiet. Julian and Summer both stared at her. Your son. Summer touched her swelling cheek, confused. Who are you? I thought that was Joelle's kid. Julian recognized Claire. His expression shifted. Andy is your child? Claire's chest was heaving. Mr. Sterling, I've always respected you as my boss, but if you let your wife kidnap my son, I will burn your company to the ground. If we don't find Andy, I'm leaking every piece of internal data I have access to. Mark arrived next, his eyes like daggers as he looked at Julian. Don't test us, Sterling. I will see both of you in court by Monday morning. This ends now. Julian finally realized that the kid was my nephew, not my son. He looked like he'd been struck by lightning. He couldn't speak. Summer, on the other hand, started shouting. So what? Do you have any idea how powerful the Sterling legal team is? You can't touch me even if I did take him. I punched Summer in the temple. She probably didn't know that during my years abroad, I'd taken up Krav Maga and kickboxing. Summer hit the floor, her head knocking against the corner of a desk. Blood trickled down her face as she shrieked. The police swarmed me, telling me to calm down. For once, Julian didn't say a word to defend her. He just stood there, looking at me with a pathetic, sickening guilt. Claire was sobbing. Mark held her, looking at Julian like he wanted to end him. If it weren't for the badges in the room, I think he might have. In the middle of the chaos, a quiet voice came from the doorway. "Excuse me? Is anyone here looking for a little boy?" A college kid walked in, wearing glasses and a plain t-shirt. He was holding Andy's hand. Claire lunged forward and gathered Andy into her arms, weeping. "Why did you run away, honey? Why didn't you say anything?" "I am sorry, Mommy. I didn't mean to." Andy was crying too, burying his face in her neck. "I saw that mean lady being mean to Annie. I just wanted to get back at her." I froze. The boy had understood everything. In his simple world, anyone who made his Annie sad was the villain. I hugged his small body, trying to hide my sobs. "It's okay, Andy. You're safe. That's all that matters." Mark thanked the college student. The kid waved it off. I just saw him wandering near the intersection. A car almost clipped him. You guys really need to watch him more carefully. The intersection? Julian whirled around to face Summer. "No, it wasn't me," Summer stammered. "I only took him to the bridge." He ran off toward the street himself. The mean lady left me on the road. Andy shouted, pointing at Summer. "The video is back up," a technician called out. The screen showed clear footage of Summer dragging a crying child to the edge of a busy road and leaving him there. "Anything else to say?" Mark asked, his voice cold. Summer was trembling. She looked at Julian for help, but his eyes were like ice. The entire room was looking at her with pure disgust. Realizing she was caught, she snapped. "Fine. I took him. I wanted to see that cold, perfect Joel finally crack. I didn't want to hurt him." She pointed at Andy. But he wouldn't stop crying. He kept screaming for his auntie. He sounded just like Julian in his sleep, calling her name over and over. I couldn't take it. I wanted him to shut up, so I left him. "You're insane." Julian lunged at her, his fist raised, but Summer's eyes rolled back, and she fainted before he could touch her. The police took her to the hospital under guard. The nightmare was finally over. In the weeks that followed, Julian Sterling was a ghost. He made several massive errors in his business dealings, costing the company millions. Claire resigned, and although Julian offered her a massive severance package and a recommendation, she refused both. Mark filed charges for kidnapping and child endangerment. With the witness and the video, there was no defense. Even the Sterling legal team couldn't save her. Summer Reed was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and he became a lot quieter after that, but he was safer. I thought that was the end of it, until I received a massive wire transfer in my bank account. Then came a text. "This is what I owed your parents, paid in full with interest. As for what I owe you and our child, I'll find a way to pay that back too." I looked at the number in my account and felt nothing. Soon after, a headline went viral. Shock. CEO Julian Sterling issues public apology to ex-wife. Admits to infidelity and tragic loss of child. The video showed a man clutching an ultrasound report, weeping openly. The once arrogant golden boy looked broken. The internet went wild. Sterling Industries stock crashed again, nearing bankruptcy. I couldn't understand why a man who loved power so much would choose to destroy himself like this. But I didn't care. I was busy with my own life. "Joel, let me carry that." Caleb Vance, the student who had found Andy, took my bag and walked beside me. He wore black-rimmed glasses and had that clean, fresh energy that only 20-somethings have. We'd stayed in touch after the police station. He was a senior at the local university, and today he'd asked me to go to a movie with him. He was blunt about his feelings. He said he'd fallen for me the moment he saw me at the precinct. I found it a bit funny, but I wasn't opposed to seeing where it went. Of course, the world is small. We ran into Julian as he was getting out of a beat-up sedan in front of the mall. It had only been a few months, but he looked like he'd aged a decade. He was unshaven, his eyes sunken. When he saw me, his face lit up, but when he saw Caleb, his expression shifted into a defensive scowl. Caleb, being taller and broader, stepped in front of me, shielding me. "Can I help you, sir?" "Sir?" Julian bristled. "You're just a kid. You think Joel would actually be interested in someone like you?" Caleb let out a slow, amused chuckle. "Well, I'm not exactly past my prime, am I? That's more than some people can say." The words hit Julian like a physical blow. He actually stumbled back. I couldn't help but laugh. I patted Caleb's shoulder and stepped out. "Mr. Sterling, we're running late. Goodbye." "Joel," he shouted as we walked away. His voice wasn't steady. It was filled with 10 years of regret, sounding like it was about to break. Joelle, do you still love me? Even a little. I smiled. I didn't hesitate, and I didn't look back. No. The word felt light. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I hadn't even known I was carrying. That year, the snow in Chicago was heavier than usual, as if it were trying to wash the city clean. In the spring, I boarded a plane to London. It wasn't to heal this time. It was to start a new life. Caleb came to the airport to see me off, insistently carrying my heavy bags despite my protests. I brushed a bit of sweat from his forehead, and he caught my hand. Joelle, he said softly, his eyes searching mine. Will you come back? Maybe. Maybe not. But I love you. I want to take care of you. We could. The future is a long way off, I interrupted gently. Life is unpredictable. Who knows what will happen? You have a big life ahead of you, Caleb. Go live it. If you've seen the world and you still feel this way when you look back, come find me. I ruffled his hair, noticing the shimmer in his eyes. Life in London was exactly what I needed, quiet and steady. I found a new job and bought a small flat of my own. It wasn't big, but it was mine. Mark called me to tell me that Sterling Industries had finally folded. Julian had sold everything to pay off the company's debts, including the Maybach. Someone had seen him with Ellie, moving into a small apartment in a different part of the city, keeping a low profile. Mark told me this in the same tone he'd used to discuss the weather. But when he spoke about me, his voice softened. Joelle, Claire's worried you're lonely over there. Do you want her to come stay with you for a bit? I smiled and told him I was fine. I made friends from all over the world. My life was full. I had become free and passionate, some of my younger self would never have recognized. If that little shy girl from high school could see me now, she'd be proud. After I hung up with Mark, I looked out at the clear blue sky. Julian had been the brightest light of my youth and the deepest chill of my marriage. But now, the storm that had lasted over a decade had finally stopped. My winter was over.